I'll go around and stuff. Leaking hot water heater, uh, part two of two. In the first video I posted, I covered the basic components of a leaking water heater. So if you didn't know that stuff, you need to review it to understand what you're going to need to do. In my specific case, I have a 75-gallon water heater. It is leaking, and unfortunately, it's going to take a week for the new water heater to arrive here and then maybe another day or two to get it installed. It's too heavy for me to do by myself. It's not a difficult installation from a plumbing point of view, but it's too heavy to be moved around by a single person. Okay, so I have a leaking water heater. I gotta wait a week. Well, can't do without hot water for a whole week. So is there some way that I can limp along until then, have hot water, turn it on and get hot water, and then shut off the hot water and drain enough or something so that it won't leak and I can do the recycle again. And that's what this is about. How you limp along. And it's going to depend on your particular situation. I'll explain mine and how I am able to limp along. Okay, I have a leak. Now, I had already thought, well, the most likely place for a leak in a hot water heater is where there is a port or a hole already in the tank, such as where cold water comes in, hot water goes out, the pressure relief valve, the drain valve. Um, I think I've covered. There's hot water, cold water, pressure relief valve, and the drain valve. There are four. Okay, I replaced the pressure relief valve, I replaced the drain valve, and that didn't do it. Because of the cosmetic shell around the water heater at the top where the hot comes out and the cold goes in, I was told to feel around the connections there, and if there's any water, then the leak is occurring there. I couldn't feel anything, but unfortunately, they give you a very small hole, and the line goes down around the end of the cosmetic outer shell, and you can't really see if it's in fact leaking uh, at the actual pipe connection to the tank. I could not see that, but it just didn't. And I think I explained the earlier one. When I took the burner assembly out, when I first looked in the burner assembly hole in there, it was full of all kind of crap, uh, chunks of rust and various mineral, or I don't know what it was, but a lot of stuff. So I took the burner out and cleaned all that up and started using a flashlight to look around in there. I want to understand how it's going to work. And this is what I found is that here is the flue that takes the hot gas from my burner up through the center of the tank and then out to a vent that goes on all the way, piped all the way outside to get the results of combustion out of the house, okay? Well, in my particular case, and you can see rust right here, water was coming down that particular flue vent, flue hole. And I was a little mystified by that. I mean, but then I read that you can get condensation, and when you first fill a tank with cold water, if it's a very humid environment out surrounding the water heater, uh, the cold water will cause condensate out of the humid air to form on this flue pipe in the inside of your tank, and it can eventually run down and drip onto the burner. Whereas I explained, in my particular case, there's a small cavity underneath the burner where condensate is meant to collect, and then the burner will basically evaporate it off. And when the burner's going, the evaporation doesn't occur. The tank gets hot enough, and there's no more condensation. And then normally, with the tank full of hot water or relatively hot water, you have limited condensation. But that can occur, and it could be condensation enough to drip out the bottom, and that's a normal thing. And if you have a leak, that would be something you want to figure out. Is it just condensate coming from very humid air. It depends on where the location of your water heater is, but that's always a possibility. And there are holes in the cosmetic shell of your water heater to let condensate, if it gets too much, to drip out. So the location of the leak is one aspect. Okay. So I was told if you want to shut down, you got a leak in water heater, you need to shut it completely down. Well, as I said, that's fine and dandy. If you've got a 1 day service, you could shut it down today. In the afternoon, you get a new water heater installed. And there are services offered like that, but they're going to bring whatever they have in stock. And usually it's a 50-gallon tank. That is a normal size tank for a 3, 4, 5 piece in home. That's usually what is installed. 50 gallons. That's probably the majority of them. But in my case, it's a little larger home, and I have multiple showers, and periodically I have a lot of visitors. So I need the 75 gallons. Well, unfortunately, that's not in stock at big box retailers, and prices at 75 run from $1,500 to 5,000, depending on what features and function you needed. So I wound up ordering one instead of perhaps getting it from a local plumbing distributor who probably is only going to sell those higher priced units. I don't need all the bells and the whistles personally. I don't think I do. So anyway, the normal is you're supposed to shut everything down and drain the tank and set and wait until you get a new install. Well, in my case, the delivery is a week away, so I had to do something similar to what you'll have to do, no matter your situation, and that is I needed to shut the gas off to the system, no more heat, make sure it's totally shut off. And I sort of did that in the following steps, and I'll have you walk through it. One is the control valve right on your gas water heater. Usually it will be in this other position over here, allowing full gas to come in. You want to take, maybe push down slowly and rotate that into the off position over here. That will kill the pilot light, and it shuts all gas off to this control unit. Okay, now you want to come down underneath your water heater and turn this natural gas line valve totally off. This is the feed line that goes up to the controller mounted on your water heater. You want that to totally be off. I don't think those things leak very often, but obviously if you smell gas at any time, you need to shut it down and contact a gas company, or if you know how to, go out and turn off the natural gas at the meter to your whole house. Okay. Next thing you need to do is to shut down a water inlet valve, and this is the valve located that turns the inlet water, which goes down into the top of your tank. And in my particular case, I found out that this valve has gone bad, and it will shut off like 95% of the inlet water, but not all of it. Part of the new install, as I'm told, is that they replace this inlet valve, and that's really good because this one isn't working. To totally get the water to shut off in my situation, and maybe yours, you might have to use the whole house shut-off valve, and if you know where it's located, great. If you don't, you should find out right now. Where is the inside of your house water shut-off valve? I'm having used that to keep water from dripping back into my water tank and leaking. Okay, if you're going to drain it, that's fine, and it's going to be replaced tomorrow. But if this thing is still leaking, you're going to have water coming out of that water inlet pipe and dripping all over the place. And your installer or you're not going to want that. So you may have to use a whole house valve, and that's what I'm doing. The next thing is you want to open up one of the inside, and this is the hot water over here. Open up the inside faucet, one or more, and let pressure off of the system by releasing some of the water that's already in, hot water that's already in your line. So you want to leave that open, okay? Also gives an air source instead of creating a vacuum if water is going to be going out the bottom, and no water coming in from the inlet valve. It will in fact form a vacuum, and you don't want that. You want the inside of the tank open to the air so the water can properly gravity drain out. Okay, so here is the water drain valve on my particular tank. And what you do is I have a cap over the end of mine, but you take the cap off, you put a garden hose on it, and then in my particular case, I use a flat blade screwdriver to open up the drain, and water will drain completely out of the bottom. Not totally completely, but it will drain most of this tank. And as I told you earlier, in my particular case, I have a concave shaped bottom tank here. And this drain line uh, is above and inside of the actual tank, which means the concave comes all the way down to the cosmetic base here. And again, I suggested before, the flue pipe is welded on the inside to this bottom portion, and then they stick on this, the tank, all this up here gets put down, is welded down here on the outside, and then the flue pipe at the top is welded on the outside of the tank. So there's a big weld down here and a weld at the top. And one place or the other is, in my case, is leaking. Okay, you're draining water out of the water tank using a garden hose. You also want to open up the pressure relief valve, and that again will allow atmosphere or air into the tank so your gravity feed works okay. And in my particular case, because it's code, there is a pipe connected to the pressure relief valve that comes down near the floor so that scalding water is not going to splash all over somebody. And in my case, again, this is it showing open. In my case, I managed to put a bucket underneath of the pressure relief valve, and there you see it dripping into the bucket. Okay, so you drain water out of the drain valve, and you're got the pressure relief valve open, and eventually it will stop dripping water. Now, if it doesn't, that means that your water shutoff valve is not closing completely. That's a tip-off. If you keep getting water out the pressure relief valve, it means there's water coming in the top, and even though you're draining it out the bottom, and it may be that the water coming in the top is slower than the water that you're draining out, and uh, you might get tricked by that, but you understand that if that water shutoff valve is not completely closed, one way to check it is shut off the drain valve, okay, and open up your high pressure valve. And if water comes out, that means it's still got too much water in it, and you can drain a bucket or two out. Not water coming out of a high pressure valve should eventually stop, even though it has 40 gallons of water left in it or whatever. You still haven't totally drained it, but you've drained it down below where the pressure temperature drain valve is. If you can't get that to happen, that means the water inlet valve is leaking. Okay, that I'm not sure you've been told in any other video that you've seen. So that's one of the things you got to check when you're draining a tank and you're in preparation for a new install, or they install it, they'll probably check it the same way. Is is the water inlet valve at the top fully shut off? In my case, it was not. Okay, I had to turn off the hot water, turn off the cold water to my whole house so the tank wouldn't keep refilling to that leaky valve. Okay, so eventually, in my particular case, and certainly in yours, you want to get so you have no water in the tank at all. And this shows my pressure gauge attached to the drain valve, and it's showing, I think, 20 pounds, but basically water itself has weight, and there will be some pressure right at the drain valve, but it's basically not pressurized anymore. Okay, now, um, in your case, if you're going to already know you're going to replace completely empty the tank using the drain valve and open up your pressure relief valve and till there's no more water coming out of the drain. Then you should be good to go for replacement. Well, or if you want to try replacing the pressure relief valve or the drain valve, you can go ahead and do so at that time. I already done that and it didn't help me. So I began to wonder, well, where the hell is it leaking? I mean, I can't see it. I can't find it. I don't understand. But it's definitely leaking down the flue. So one of the things I did was I lifted the vent up off the top of my water heater so I could properly see the flue. And what I found was, and this is the flue pipe, and you can't see it, but you can see this is the vent. Well, this is the actual pipe above it. There is a vent cover that sits down over this, but this is a pipe above it. And what I found looking down into this flue was that there, I want to call them vortex rods. I think they're, have another name. But basically, the air comes up, hot air from down below where the burner is, and then sort of gets fan bladed and makes a swirl, if you will. It tries to distribute and impede somewhat the air coming up off the burner so that more heat gets absorbed by the tank. And this flue comes up through the center of the tank. When I took, and I was able to take those, whatever they're called, they're just setting in there. It may not even come installed in the tank. The installer may have to put those in, whatever. By the way, there are various water heaters that have blower systems up here. They may even have a blower system on the bottom to feed fresh air into the burner, and a blower here to force the air out the vent pipe. And that is possible. I don't have that. I took out the what I call vortex, and they just sit down in there. And looking down in the pipe, what I found was these sort of angle irons, and they're just, that's what they are. They're called angle irons. They've been sort of welded to the pipe, and I can't fully see down far enough. I mean, it would be rather hard to do welding inside the pipe. I see no welds inside the pipe as far as I can see down in. But I know it's leaking somewhere down there. I just can't see how far. So what I did in my particular case was I got the tank full of water again and heated it up. And sure enough, it began leaking again. So I shut down the heating portion. I'm not going to heat it up anymore. But instead of draining it out of the tank drain, I shut off the inlet water valve and I opened up the pressure relief valve and put a bucket under it. So I thought maybe, well, maybe I think it's leaking near the top somewhere. I know it's leaking down the flue, but maybe it's leaking up at the top somewhere, or maybe right at the top where that weld is, and I can't see it. Okay, so I used the pressure relief valve, and it drained hot water. Hot's at the top, cold gets put down at the bottom and heated and brought up. That's all. The water inlet pipe tries to go literally down toward the bottom and force the cold water underneath of the hot water, which is at the top of the tank. So I drained, and it took me maybe 10, 15 gallons. I got to the point where no more water was coming out of the pressure relief valve. Okay. And what I noticed was the leak stopped. Yeah, it was no longer dripping down the flue onto the burner or the cosmetic bottom of my tank. Aha, well, sort of. Because looking down the flue or up the flue, I still couldn't see where it's leaking, but I know that it's at the top and uh, slightly below the pressure relief valve. Okay. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means that one, I didn't have to totally empty the tank, And two, there was a possibility that I could refill the tank, heat the water back up, use it for a shower, shut off the inlet water to the tank, drain out 10 gallons, and the leak would stop, and I'd be able to limp along. And that's exactly what I did. Now, it depends on your particular leak and where it is, and it might be very, very, very hard to find. But in my case, you could try this approach where you turn the heat off to the system, you turn off the inlet water, you use a pressure relief valve to drain the hot water out of the top of the tank. And you drain, I use 5 gallon bucket, you drain till there is no more water coming out the pressure relief valve. That means you have drained down the hot water at the top of the tank. See if your leak stops then. If it doesn't, that means the leak is farther down somewhere. It may not be coming through the flue. It could be coming on all the way on the outer shell and leaking down the side and then collecting and then coming out one of the holes in the bottom of the cosmetic tank cover. That's a possibility. Again, the problem I have with that is that if it's really assembled in 2 or 3 different pieces and welded, it shouldn't be leaking out the side unless it's at a hole that's already in the tank. The drain valve, the high pressure relief valve, or their inlet or outlet, unless it's leaking at those points. It shouldn't be leaking out the tank itself. It should be one piece, and I ain't buying that it somehow corrodes. They've made a hole through the side of steel that's got to be this thick or something like that, unless it's at a weld point. And again, no matter how they assemble it, it's not a unitary, no weld system. There's weld somewhere. I think I have a weld at the bottom and a weld at the top, and it's, that's it, 2 welds. It may have 3 welds, that depends how they constructed it. But nonetheless, I have water coming down my flue, and it appears to me that the leak is at the very top, which would be the highest pressure point on the tank, is at the very top, where the pressure relief valve is in fact located. So I drain enough water so nothing comes out of the pressure relief valve and the leak stops. Now, so in my particular case, I explained earlier, the water inlet valve is not totally closing off, which I found out because I would drain the top through the pressure relief valve. I would stick my pressure gauge back on the drain valve, and it would show it was no pressure, and then close the pressure relief valve, and then the pressure would come back up again. Like, what? And I would open the pressure relief valve, and water would come out again. Like, what? The inlet water control valve is not fully closed. It is letting water leak by it and fill up the top of the tank again. So in my case, I shut off all the water for the whole house. I found my whole house water shut off, and thank God it is fully closing. Otherwise, I have to go out in the street, try to close it, and see if it is fully shutting off the water in the house. But anyway, right now, I have the whole house shut off with water. I have the pressure relief valve open. I don't have any water coming out of it, and I have no leak. There's no water coming out of the tank and leaking out of the bottom of the tank and all over the floor. Okay. Now, what I intend to do from this point is around 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, I'm going to turn back on the whole, shut down the pressure relief valve. Actually, shut down the pressure relief valve. I'm going to open a faucet. I'm going to turn back on the whole house water valve, so I'm getting water everywhere in the house, cold water. I'm going to then open the water control valve right at the water heater to let fresh water into the tank, and I'm going to refill the tank. Okay, and I might have to periodically open up the pressure relief valve over here to let air get pushed out of it, and so that the water can fully fill the tank. Okay, I'm going to get a full tank of water. All right, now I'm going to uh, turn on the gas valve at the bottom, which allows gas to come up to my unit attached to the water heater. I'm going to open it up, push it down, and rotate it to the pilot light position. I'm going to ignite it with the igniter or a match up right at the pilot light hole in the burner. I'm going to hold down that pilot light control valve until, by letting go, the pilot light continues to go. Then I'm going to turn the valve, the control valve on the unit attached to the water heater, to the fully open position so that gas can now be controlled by the controller to and be sent to the burner pan. Okay. The next thing is I've got the pilot light lit. I got the controls all set up to heat the water. I'm going to turn the variable control knob for water heater temperature. And I'm going to set it up till I hear it click. And there is in fact a click involved when the control unit sends gas to the burner. And I'll hear that click, and there might be some slight delay. Obviously, if I smell gas, I'm shutting everything down, okay? I mean, but if nothing bad like that happens, the burner should kick on, and it should be fine. Okay, the water is going to start to be heated, and I have put my pressure gauge back on the drain valve. The drain valve is open and not leaking, and I'm going to watch it and see that the pressure comes up uh, to around where it was, around 60 psi or so. And I might periodically open up a water faucet on the inside of the house to get some of that hot water moving through the pipes. And I'm going to play that sort of game. I'll open up slightly the pressure relief valve to see, yeah, it's there. I'm getting more and more filled. Air might come out periodically, but I'll get a full load of water, and my open faucet inside is now draining water at least at a good rate. So I know that the tank is full. I know the burner is going, and it's heating up the water. Now it's going to take a while. From whatever, it's been over 12 hours since I had the burner on. So the water's been setting in there, and it's probably down to, I don't know, wouldn't go probably below ambient, right? And it's like 70 degrees in my garage. So it's 70 degrees. Say I got to go 70 degrees, 125 degrees. It's going to take maybe an hour of the burner going constantly. I can watch the pressure. I can open up various faucets to see if the hot water is finally flowing. Okay, this is all in preparation to have a shower. So now I'm going to get my shower. My wife needs a shower. I need a shower. We might drain some of the cold water, which is now available, into a tank to use during the day. We'll reload the toilets with fresh water, so on and so on and so on. We take the showers. Now, back out to the water heater. I'm going to, using the knob on the water heater mounted control unit, I'm going to rotate it, push it down and rotate it to pilot light position, and then I'm going to rotate it to full off position. That will turn all gas off to that control module. Then I'm going to shut down the actual gas valve, the yellowy corded the valve right there, so there's no natural gas going to your water heater. Then I'm going to put a bucket underneath my pressure relief valve and start opening up that valve to get the water out of the top of the tank. And again, I'll have to fill up a bucket, go empty it, put the bucket back under, open the valve again, get a bucket full of water, shut down the pressure relief valve. Oh, I was also going to turn off the water inlet valve at the top. Dumb me. After I turn the gas off, I'm going to also shut off the inlet water valve. I don't want inlet water in it anymore. Even though it's going to seep in, shut off the big main valve. I don't want any water, so I shut off the whole house valve. Water's not getting in. Gas is not getting in. So I use the pressure relief valve now to drain the tank down so where it's below the pressure relief valve port or hole. Now it's not leaking anymore. I've got some leak during that whole period that I'm heating water and using it, but I can then quickly shut the whole thing down, take pressure off the system, drain water out. I could, in fact, use a drain hose at the bottom to drop down the water at the top to the point where it's just below the pressure relief valve. If you're following me, I could just open up the drain line and then periodically I can open up the pressure relief valve and see if I've drained out enough water or not. If water still's coming out, then I haven't drained enough out, and I can let it continue to drain out the bottom, open this up until no more water comes out of it, shut down my drain valve at the bottom, and now I'm stable again, and it should stop leaking down the flue. And yes, I'll have some water, but I'm stable again for the next cycle. And I can repeat this sort of cycle for all the days I have to wait until I have a new water heater. Hopefully you're understanding what I'm trying to get at. It's totally going to depend where your leak is. Mine is from the flue somewhere out of weld, no doubt. Anyway, Uncle Ron and stuff, this is part two. This has to do with a leaking water heater. How you can limp along, maybe, until you get a new water heater. My wife was saying, well, geez, we have to go to a hotel. We don't have hot water. You know, and that's what probably some people would have to do. I don't know. Next day service, I think, is a misnomer. You might be able to get it, but be prepared if you don't. If you don't know anything about natural gas, if you don't know about plumbing and any of that kind of stuff, then I suggest you just do what everybody tells you. Turn everything off. The only problem with that is that water control valve at the top may not fully shut off, so your installer would have to deal with that. He'll probably find out pretty quickly, you know. And you may be out without water the day of the installation. Uncle Ron and stuff. Today is the 22nd of February. I got other stuff to do, but I did want to complete this. What do you do to limp along with a leaking water heater? Uncle Ron and stuff. That's it for this one too. Blah 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 blah. I do hope it helps though.